Welcome back to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie, where we believe and experience becomes truth. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and joining me in studio is world-renowned psychic Eddie Connor. And with our special guest co-host, we have multiple Emmy-winning investigative reporter, Ana Garcia.
Thank you, Tony. I'm Ana Garcia. We encourage you to support our sponsors, Conscious Life Expo, by going to consciouslifeexpo.com to purchase your tickets for their February 2015 event.
And take your mind on a literary journey by traveling over to adventuresunlimitedpress.com to purchase books from many of our famed experts featured on Truth Be Told.
In our first hour, we talked with conspiracy theorist and author Ken Thomas about the military-industrial conspiracies and cover-ups from UFOs to JFK.
And in this hour, we have actor and investigator Sean Stone and writer and social commentator Dean Ryan joining us. Sean is the talented son of the controversial filmmaker Oliver Stone, and Sean has also acted in many of his father's films such as Wall Street, The Doors, JFK, and Natural Born Killers. He has starred and directed in his own feature film, Greystone Park. Sean joined the team of investigators for True TV's hit show, Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura, and he currently hosts an alternative media show titled Buzzsaw, styling itself as the real X-Files while looking into the hidden agenda behind the news.
Dean Ryan is a writer, social commentator, and radio personality from 21stCenturyWire.com. Dean's worked with Alex Jones' InfoWars and Coast to Coast AM as a segment producer, then as an associate producer of Alex Jones' film Obama Deception 2, so far unreleased. He later went on to projects with Sean Stone and activist Adam Kokesh to challenge corrupt governments in mainstream media. Today, you can find Dean Ryan spreading the message of freedom in film, television, and radio, and by any means necessary.
Eddie and Anna, if you're like me, I love history, and I think we can learn so much from our past mistakes. But with all the current government cover-ups and scheming going on behind the scenes, it seems we're destined to keep living the same mistakes.
It does look that way, but you know what? Let's ask Sean and Dean what their honest thoughts are on today's biggest conspiracy theory topics and see if they can shine a light on that. So let's please welcome Sean and Dean.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing well. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being here. I know one of you is like over in Australia or something like that.
Currently in New Zealand.
Oh, New Zealand.
New Zealand. Don't you love when everyone says, what time is it over there?
Yeah, no, right. You're like late, early, whatever it is. Well,
yeah, I have no idea what time it is right now.
Well, I'm so excited to have you guys on the show. We just finished talking about JFK with Ken Thomas, an author and conspiracy theorist. And so having you guys here is going to just sweeten the pot. So we're ready to get going and get started. You guys are both, fairly young. I feel like like an old man compared to you guys, but when it comes to conspiracy theory, I'm just a puppy. So I'm going to learn from you guys today, and I'm really wanting to start with the Illuminati. That's something that we've had people on our show before about, Freemasons and UFOs and pretty much everything we can talk about. We've never really talked about the Illuminati, and I would like to just start and find out your opinion on who are the Illuminati and what is their big significance to the world, let alone just America.
Dean, answer that.
Well, I guess we're starting with the essay question portion.
Right?
Yes.
The Illuminati is kind of a general term of the secret elite. And really, Illuminati, from my understanding, is the bearers of the light. And it kind of starts in the Freemason level, but it really starts once you get to the 33rd degree.
Right.
And, it's people like Jay-Z, Will Smith, Barack Obama to a degrry. And
why are they all black?
Well, thank you, Sean. But there's other ones as well, just the big elites. And they have a lot of say in kind of culture. And, as they say, communication, 90% of it's nonverbal. So they have their symbolisms everywhere. But So I'm sure Sean has a better explanation than me. I'm kind of all over the place.
There you go. Back to you, Sean.
All right, Sean.
That was
It's your
great, Dean.
serve.
Thank you.
For me, what? All right. So you're asking, what is the Illuminati? Is that what the
Yeah,
question?
because that word has been thrown around for so many years, and a lot of people are like, who are the Illuminati? What, is it a group? Is it a
Secret
secret
society.
society? What is?
And
What
then
is
it's
it?
been so watered down too that it's either like this really horrific, horrible thing, we're going to all die and burn in hell, or it's kind of like, oh, it's Beyonce.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounded a little watered down when it's like Jay-Z and Will Smith and Barack Obama. They don't. It's an interesting collection of individuals.
Right.
Yeah.
I was looking at my CDs, Sean, and looking at my record collection.
I see. You weren't really paying attention.
That's how you call the
Oh,
list. Okay.
there we
There
go.
you go.
Look, that's what kind of like the $6 million question, right? Who is the Illuminati? The historical understanding we have is that of 1776, roughly. Adam Weishaupt in Bavaria, and he may have been sponsored by one of the Rothschild families there, although I'm not sure that that's entirely factual or presumed. But the point being that Adam Weishaupt comes out with this new lodge that's ultimately tied into some of the Masonic lodges, but again, it's not initially Masonic per se, because Weishaupt is himself a Jesuit from an early age, trained as a Jesuit, ultimately renounces his affiliations with the Catholic Church and writes this document, and ultimately espouses these beliefs that are supposed to be anti Catholic Church, anti-monarch, ultimately, calling for what's like a new world order in regards to the destruction of these sort of imperial monarchical powers in Europe. And the Illuminati itself was real organization, presumably died out by the early 19th century. And some people say it had a lot to do with the French Revolution. So the actual history, there is an history, and you can get historians who know much more about the Illuminati at that time to speak on it. My understanding of the Illuminati is more of the powers that be, going back to the fall of the angels from heaven. Well, if you look in the Bible, the fall of the Watchers, let's say, who came to Mount Hermon, and the 200 or so, or 200, I think it was 200 angels, and how they basically started to influence mankind at that point in the arts of war and metallurgy and agriculture and all kinds of sorcery and astrology and whatnot, and all kinds of techniques. So this idea of them being actually illuminated shining ones, non-human, makes much more sense. And so when you talk about people who are Illuminati now, it's because there are basically secret societies and orders going back to the ancient days, practicing techniques to communicate with these beings, and that oftentimes involves magical rituals, ceremonies, things of that nature.
And do you believe that? Do you believe that we have that now in our world?
That we have them, or that they're here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you believe that?
Yes.
You do. And where do you place that belief in? Is there something, because when something is secret, or and this tying it back to conspiracies against or things that we cannot see or know, when something is so secretive, do you find that it is that much harder then to try, you can either prove or disprove its existence because it's so secretive?
Well, I mean, the trouble is that you kind of have to know it for yourself. And you have to, I think you at some point have to come across it. You either have to experience it directly, interact with these entities that are non-human, trust in your own memories, your own past life memories, for example, memories of a higher plane of existence. And once you go into that state, I think you start to recognize that this reality is really just a hologram, and it's one of many realms. I was watching the Lego movie the other night, and it's funny because it actually shows you a lot about the reality when it talks about the different realms of existence and how each of one of us is the special. We are as soon as we wake up and recognize our own creative and imaginative abilities, but most of us are locked up into the societal norms and customs in the matrix, so we never realize that we can become master builders. And now, what is master builder? Why do they keep calling master builder? Well, that's a mason.
Right.
It's like it's very funny that they keep referring to master builders, which is such an overtly Masonic term,
Right.
in that film. So the point is that yes, this stuff is real. It's practiced. It's rituals. I mean, you can look into the various orders. You can see skull and bones in societies like this, but you have to ultimately, I think, address it for yourself and look into your own spiritual life and your own belief systems and realize that reality is only what our mind tells us it is. If our minds are limited and we only believe reality to be restricted to these three dimensions, well, then that's where your reality begins and ends. But it doesn't mean that's all that reality ever will be. It's just you've restricted your reality.
Sean, Dean, would you guys say that the Illuminati are way more clear about their intention than the everyday person, that they're more clear about the outcome they want to create in their own community or as a national population and a global population than we are as everyday citizens?
Well, I think the Illuminati, there's definitely like this demonic pedophilia aspect to it. I mean, you can definitely see that now in pop culture. I mean, a lot of the biggest stars in Hollywood, they're all, under 21.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's this fixation with youth and just the teachings of the Illuminati and kind of the stuff they do. So I think they're pretty clear on it. Whether people believe it or not is up to them. But I watch the Grammys every year. It's pretty clear what the message is.
Yeah, but I don't think that necessarily. Okay, I would say that when you talk about the higher orders of power, then you are talking about people who have intention. And when for example, you have the nature of the British Empire, which very clearly, under the influence of people like Cecil Rhodes and his Rothschild backers in England, wanted to reincorporate the Americas into the British Empire. They very clearly wanted to rebrand the British Empire as a Commonwealth. They very clearly wanted to establish the New World Order, being a system that transcended all nations, basically destroyed nation states in the process, and put the entire world under sort of the Anglo-American influence of law and monetary influence, right? Now, whether or not this was an Illuminati scheme, or this is just that clique, which is called like the Milner Trust, the round table, it's called the Round Table groups. I mean, it's spoken up by Carol Quigley. There's a lot of research that was done on it. You can research more for yourself. The point is, this was a very intentional operation that was run. So, you're talking about people who, let's say, have the time and energy
And
to
resources.
think for 100 years into the future, and that's just what creators do. I mean, that's what writers do when we write a script. We sit around and we plot and we plan and we draw up blueprints, and architects do it. So again, you go back to masonry, the idea of a master builder, people who are who have certain initiatives and goals that they want to achieve, and they basically tap people to help them achieve that end, whether or not those people who are tapped necessarily know what they're doing or not.
Well, so in a sentence, in a sentence, are the Illuminati considered bad, or are they considered good for everyday listeners?
Well, just take what Dean said about the pedophilia.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to say that all Illuminati practice that kind of ritual abuse of children. Actually, if you look at the nature of ritual abuse of children, go back to what the Jesuit, what was his name, Ignatius Loyola had said: "Give me the child before the age of 7, and I will give you the man." Because they say all it takes really is to condition a child before the age of 7, and you basically have generated that mindset, the belief system, right, the cultural background, how we behave.
Wow.
Most of that gets generated before we're 7 years old.
Right.
So if you really want to influence and let's say control a culture or a civilization, you're going to do what you're doing now. To target all.
That
Right, exactly.
And
Back which is,
right.
I wouldn't say the entertainment in Hollywood to, what Corey said in an interview a few years ago is that the biggest problem, Illuminati's biggest problem in Hollywood is pedophilia. So there's definitely that aspect of it, which is quite, is what we see in all the music and everything going on over there.
But there's been more exposure about the pedophilia recently, and Hollywood, and obviously with these kids talking about the rituals that they were involved with, involving ministers, I think, in the parliament.
Right.
So you're seeing that coming out in London and England. But Dean, you have some insights into what's been going on here, not just overtly in Hollywood, but also behind the scenes from directors and child actors and things like this, no?
Oh, yeah, and it's going to come out more and more.
Well, I was going to say, you hear it all the time now.
Yep, you hear it, but then it gets covered up. You hear it, it gets covered up. But what's going to happen, in my opinion, it's starting to come through even in my line of work, there's going to be a huge explosion of certain people being exposed, and not to point fingers at anybody, but there's certain people even right now that it's all finally coming back and blowing up in their face.
You mean like the allegations against Bill Cosby right now?
Yes. And there's going to be more things that pop up. And I love what you gentlemen are talking about. And this sounds like it's an offshoot thing. As an intuitive, someone who reads energy for a living, it's what I've done for 25 years. I will tell you, everything that we live today, every thought we think, every action we do, every good relationship we're in, every bad relationship we're in, every sucky boss, every wonderful boss we attract to us, it's all started before we turned 7 years old. It can be traced back to your beliefs, what you saw through osmosis when you were 7 and under, every last bit of it. And unless we're constantly doing something, and I would love to ask you guys this, unless we're constantly making ourselves a better person in our mind, making ourselves a better human being in our emotions, if we don't consistently on a daily basis continue to grow and evolve as an individual, then we will always be run by those programs, good or bad, that we learned when we were under 7. Would you guys agree with that, or do you have a different perspective on that?
I mean, my take is that yes, you're right. Most people are programmed and hypnotized to a certain extent by the age of 7 into their belief system. Let's be honest. When you're a kid and you just come into this world fresh, you don't know what language is, right? You just perceive. You're learning how to perceive. But the point is that you're tapped into, let's say, more of a dream time, especially those first, let's say, year of your life, right? You're just tapped into mostly dream time. You're not even awake into this reality. What are you dreaming about at that age? What are you absorbing from different dimensions beyond this one? And so then, you basically come into this world language, you start to adapt certain cultural beliefs. If you're raped, let's say, or molested before the age of 7 by a parent, for example, you might think that that's normal. You might then take that same behavior and then treat your own child the same way, because for you, you've been conditioned to believe that's a totally normal thing to do, right?
Totally. And go ahead, John.
I mean, not just pedophilia. Obviously, we're talking about this a lot, but the point being that any country is like is a mixture, collection of these cultural dynamics that are taking place. And so, I must say the one positive thing about the New World Order agenda to me is that actually, as we break down these these barriers of border and nation state and ethnicity, we can maybe start to recognize the fact that, oh, you know what, we're all common. We share certain common wants and needs as human beings, and we don't have to basically feel so xenophobic and fearful about other people's ways of worshiping, for example, or ways of foods that they eat, right, or smells, that we can actually start to break down those conditions that are cultural because of our borders. But yeah, go ahead, dude.
I was just going to say what the gentleman said earlier is, no, it's totally true. I mean, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I went to 8 years of Catholic school, and I grew up at the time before the priest scandal, and we were taught to believe that the priests were the right-hand man of God, and to never question them. The priest is always right. So that was into my belief system up until, a certain age in my adolescence as a teenager. But absolutely, that formed me from a very young age. And a lot of my, growing up had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, and I grew up Southern Baptist in the deep South. And there's still that's, anybody outside of you is an authority. You have zero power. You have no voice. And it takes a lot. And I'm going to take it just one step deeper. I grew up really, really poor. And so obviously everybody in my community was also really, really poor. And so what I saw for the first 7 to 10 years of my life was absolute poverty and destitute people. And so it took me years to get out from under that subconscious program. Is that a little piece of what you guys are talking about as well?
Yeah, I truly believe it is, because, a lot of the starlets that we see today, like Justin Timberlake, they were put into the business at a very young age, and it just so happens to be it's all like Disney or Nickelodeon, some of the biggest pedophile outlets out there.
Unreal.
From what I hear. And then it's all part of Project Monarch. Then they get the kids to pay and buy their merchandise, listen to music, movies, and then the starlet like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and Miley Cyrus, they all turn sexual and they sexualize their fans. So
he sure did.
That's where they get them very young. Very right.
Well, this is so fascinating, because when you really start thinking about it, you're like, wow, that they do this right in front of our eyes. And if we really thought about this, it's very disgusting, and it's in its own way. But I was looking back at the Illuminati, and back when George Washington was, when he was president, or in I think 1776 was when he spoke of this, about the warning of Illuminati. And he was a Mason. I mean, and so I'm curious on the Freemasons and the Illuminati. Were they when did they team up, or have they, or what do you think?
Did they team up?
Right.
Strength in numbers.
Yes.
When did they join forces?
Yes.
Again, the Illuminati you're talking about here is the Weishaupt Lodge, right? That secret society, that order that was established in 1776, and even George Washington talked about it, and he wrote in a letter saying, he's convinced of the Illuminati conspiracy and their desire to infiltrate and penetrate Masonic lodges. It's really difficult to know for sure that history. There, apparently there was a sort of interconnection with a lot of the Scottish Rite Masons, and that's why Albert Pike, who became 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite in this, in the South, was supposed to be the head of the Illuminati in the Western Hemisphere, I think, or at least he's considered one of the heads of the Illuminati. At the same time that Mazzini is supposed to be one of the heads in Europe, and again, both these guys are high-level Masons, so. There seems to have been a large connection throughout, the last 200 years for sure, including up to this day within the P2 lodges in Italy, right? Which all of a sudden people found out in the 80s. Wait a minute, all these politicians are actually, heads of Masonic lodge, this P2 Masonic lodge, and there's an Illuminati connection to that. But really, again, if you talk about the history of the spiritual side of it, the fallen angels, the jinns, or entities, aliens, maybe whatever you want to call them, that came to Earth, and the mankind development, then they've been there. They may have been the Masonic in the first place. If you go back to when
we're losing you a
little
bit there.
When Solomon built the temple, he was able to command 72 jinns, which may be fallen angels, however you want to term them, but they're non-human entities. And he commanded these jinns to command his builders, who were the actual masons, right, in terms of building a temple. So now you understand that that's basically our graphic for masonry. That people who are being initiated in masonry may be watched by non-human jinns on a different dimensional level.
Wow. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to On Air with Tony Sweet's Truth Be Told. I'm Eddie Connor.
I'm Anna Garcia.
And I'm Tony Sweet.
And we have with us right now live, we have Sean Stone, who's a filmmaker, actor, and investigator. And we have Dean Ryan, social commentator, writer, and fascinating human beings, you gentlemen. Tony has a question for you.
Well, let's move into this subject. And I know you converted to Islam, Sean, and I find that fascinating. I love religion. I love the study of religion. I think every religion is here for a reason. And but this goes to my question of going to the Middle East, where right now, not just now, for centuries, millenniums, that we've had so much conflict, and with ISIS, kind of sprung out of nowhere, at least to us people here in America.
Nothing springs out of
but
nowhere.
That's what I'm saying. It's like
we've never, out of nowhere.
you don't hear about it, and all of a sudden, boom, they're there, and you're like, where in the hell did ISIS come from? So is this another? I hate to even say this because it may piss some people off, but is this another U.S. funded group that we started years ago?
It's a fair question.
Is this another conspiracy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's much more than what appears to be. I would simply say from the surface of it, and this is just looking at it like objectively. Last year, the U.S. and France wanted to invade Syria and overthrow Assad, the president.
Right.
We had been financing all kinds of jihadis against Assad to that time period, right? Including so-called Al-Qaeda guys. But Al-Qaeda was always a name for these various jihadi networks that could be deployed, against, let's say, certain rulers or in certain countries, right? Going back to the Afghan war in the 80s. So it was a very similar situation in Syria. You had guys from 13, 14 countries showing up in Syria to fight against Assad, right? So, and then we're saying, well, we got to liberate these people, but you got these guys from all over the world coming, like a goddamn mercenary army.
I know. You hear this all the time. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what's going on, and then we can't get the support to bomb Assad in Syria. So, 6 months later, fast forward, springtime 2014, and Assad has just started winning some political elections and shoring up his power back again in Syria, and out of the blue, this group of bandits come up in Iraq, and they take 3 cities in like 3 weeks, and they claim they're ISIS. They're a state. Does that sound like there's something wrong with that picture?
Yeah.
What the heck is that? The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Wow, that's very convenient. So now you have a rogue group that claims it's basically like one of these old guerrilla armies, rebel groups that we've seen for every decade going back to World War II, has popped up, and a lot of these guys were fighting against Assad with us last year, and now they're fighting as ISIS in Iraq, and they're doing a lot of satanic things, cutting off babies' heads and stoning women and making Islam look really ugly. But in the meantime, what does it help us to do? Oh, we can now launch bombs into Syria. And by the way, we just happened to blow some infrastructure up in Syria. That was a missed target. We were really going for ISIS. What the heck is going on? You tell me. I mean, Jesus, does it really take a genius to figure out what's going on?
Well, I just thought it was funny that we took Saddam Hussein completely out within what? Weeks?
Two weeks. And actually they had captured him at that point, that. He was captured within the first weeks, and they withheld him for a year before they revealed that he was, remember that whole where they said, found him hiding.
He was in a hole.
Within 6 weeks they were torturing him for a whole year. And everything they needed before they revealed, oh wait, we got him.
Yeah. Well, I just thought it was funny because like I said, we overthrew him. He had one of the largest armies pretty much in the world. And but these people had like supposedly 20,000 ISIS members, and we can't even control them. And they're taking over cities. That's when I was like, something's going on here. Something's not right.
I think Dean's about to bust.
What's funny about the ISIS is the new tundras they're driving everywhere. I mean, they've got the best of the whole lot, and just 30,000 show up out of nowhere, and it's a little It's a little interesting how they're all lined up on the pipeline that Saudi Arabia built into Syria. Very interesting, yeah.
Well, with so many of the fighters coming from European countries, and you have all the different countries in the Union there trying to figure out, well, we're going to try and control you if we think that you are a jihadist and you're going to go overseas and join ISIS, or if you're coming back. And all these different countries are wrestling with how are they going to deal with that. Well, I don't believe that these people who are joining, these new soldiers who are joining this war, all of a sudden just woke up one day and in 24 hours decided to do this. This is something that's been going on for some time, and if they've been, as you know, to use the term radicalized, I don't know if I love that term, but that's the term that everyone uses, to go over and fight in these wars. They've been recruited and they've been working on this for some time. Like you said, this just didn't happen. Although in our world, all of a sudden, ISIS has appeared.
Right.
But this didn't just happen.
Right.
Exactly. These are groups that have been around since the collapse of Saddam Hussein. We know, for example, that Baghdadi was in a detention center anywhere. They'd held him, I think, for at least a year. And the release was in that year if he was basically into an asset, if he was realized or whatnot. But these guys never pop out of nowhere, no. And again, it's just all too convenient, as far as I'm concerned, to say that this is just some new Al Qaeda that's popping up to destroy America. To know why they want to destroy America. It doesn't really, nothing really resonates.
Right. Well, it doesn't make sense. Are you gentlemen shocked at the number of people that will believe whatever you tell them, just period? You put it on TV and they're going to believe it, period, or you put it on the radio, they believe it?
No, I'm not shocked.
Never discount the desire to hate. Remember that people want to hate. And that's what this boils down to. When you can just, you're pissed off at life. Your football team lost your girlfriend screwing the guy, whatever it is. Like, people just want, they want to take out their anger and aggression. And, it's very easy when your token satanic bad guy screws donkeys. He wants, he's a jihadi. He wants to slay you and your family. Let's kill him. I mean, geez, this is just, it's stuff.
Well, yeah. And we live in such a desensitized, violent culture in America. There's constantly violence on TV, violence in comedy, and it's more promoted, and I think it's just really dumbed down population, and the food, GMOs in the foods is really dumbing people down with the social media, which is getting in the texting, getting rid of language. They're preparing the American public just for complete pure hell, I believe, and we have to get this message out, and I think that's why I'm doing everything and in our work to help the populace.
And define
are asleep.
Yeah, and define hell. Whenever you say, it's moving us toward that sort of hell, define what that is, in your opinion.
The hell I see coming to America is the devaluation of the human experience and the dumbing down of the social and the business class, only therefore controlled down the road by artificial intelligence, which will then just a dumbed down class of Americans be just the barbaric super soldier types that will just take years. I think that's what they want to do. I think, and which is why now really the military more and more technologically savvy with drones and robots replacing the humans. And it's almost a Terminator 2 Judgment Day kind of prophecy, but it's in the blueprints, and that's what I fear most.
This will sound like an odd question. It's a sincere question. So you feel like what they're doing is dumbing us down mentally, getting us to not trust our gut instinct, what we intuitively know is right and wrong, and then if they can get enough people to follow them in that sort of brainwashed way, then it's going to be easier for them to do what their agenda is.
Exactly. That's a target. They want the youth to be gamers and have them be the future soldiers controlling drones, and just sensitize the youth, have them what the past about. A lot of school districts now don't have history class anymore because we're repeating it. They don't want to teach the Constitution and the structure of a constitutional republic. I think that's what's ahead. They do want the barbaric super soldier class to continue the ism of the psychotic federal government. It doesn't even belong to us.
And I would love to know, in your opinion, how Monsanto plays into any of this, if at all.
Well, Monsanto has genetically modified hybrid seed, and same company that the aspartame in the 1970s, and 5 times get it past the FDA because it was creating tumors and neurological problems in chimpanzees when they were trying to pass. Then they hired Donald Rumsfeld to do the bidding, and they were also the same company that created and dropped the Agent Orange in Vietnam, which affected my family because my grandfather was in the war. He received Agent Orange on him and still affects him to this day.
Yeah.
We're talking about a bunch of mad scientists called Monsanto or Monsatan, depending what you they have a lot to do with the hybrid seeds. America has the highest cancer rate
In the world.
In the world.
You don't have to look that far to see where it stems from.
Well, and then and connect, if you would, gentlemen, how they're talking about the bees. Once the bees leave the earth plane, then we all gonna die. It's pretty simple, because how else is it going to keep producing? Yes. And so they found out that Monsanto, the pesticides that they're putting in everything, is literally killing the bees and a bunch of other things too, but nobody's stopping them.
That is weird. They're just letting them die.
Well, you can't stop them because Barack Obama signed an executive order for the Monsanto Protection Act. You can't sue them. And the former head of Monsanto, now the head of FDA, which, if you study the FDA, it just protects the big corporations poisoning Americans. So there's really nothing we can do about it have Nuremberg trials. All these people behind prison.
You mentioned the Nuremberg. Is this really, we're looking at the perfected state? That's what America looks like to me.
Yeah, and you're cutting out just a little bit.
Cut
Can
out.
you repeat that one more time?
What I'm saying is, from where I'm sitting, it looks to me like we are the perfection of the Nazis. All these things we're thinking about, right? The brainwashing of the society, the normalization of violence and warfare, and having armies abroad, and justifiably so, and basically being backed by propaganda at home. The development of chemical weaponry and use of basically making the population docile. The origins of putting what's the word, fluoride water, going to the concentration camps, right?
Right.
Now that we have a concentration of the mind, which is what Huxley talked about. Even more important.
Sean and Ryan, you both have been very critical about mainstream media, about journalism and reporting. And I'm curious, from your perspective, because of what is happening now and the reaction to no indictment out of the grand jury out in Ferguson, Missouri, can you tell me whether the fact that all of a sudden the media is reacting to all of these protests and reacting to the anger, hasn't that discussion been there the whole time, but it was taking place maybe in alternative media and not in the mainstream media?
I think with Ferguson, I've been out of the country for a little while, so I haven't been able to follow it as close, but I think what we're seeing, at the very least, like we saw in the Occupy movement, is just how humongous the police state is, how military funded and military weapons. They're using nerve gas, but Geneva Convention says they use in war. They're using it right here at the American public. So we are seeing the third right, if you will, just tell the slave, freedom of speech no longer exists. If you're a journalist, you get shot with two bags. You better go home. Nothing to see here. So it's no surprise that the black community feels the same angst they felt in 1965 during the civil rights movement. And my answer to them in this long institution that attracts psychopaths, that this enforcement is not just a racist institution, it's against the human race of free being in America.
Wow.
Yeah, I tend to believe that what you're looking at is actually something more of a, not necessarily a staged scenario, but something that was intentionally escalated to actually create a level of dissension and mistrust. Everything, it feels like a setup along the lines of, what happened in the rioting of 1993 in LA, right?
Mm-hmm. Rodney King.
And ultimately what happens in cases like this is we need development in the United States. We need a plan like FDR would have drafted, right? A New Deal in terms of infrastructure, in terms of high-speed rail transit, connect these middle cities that used to be industrial center, now basically sitting raw without, with the underclass, largely unfortunate acts, but also the whites. I mean, the point is that people are out of work, right? Mm-hmm. And they're not getting it. So rather than offering America that option, we're basically going to this, not we, but the powers that be, are going to this fomenting rage and hatred against each other, using racial violence as, the way that they use religious violence, right? It's a very easy thing to fall back to, as opposed to saying, no, we need to address this issue for all Americans. We need to raise standard of living for all Americans. We need to actually have investment in our country again, right? Why are we spending all these billions of dollars every year, trillions of dollars on wars, and really against threats that are not as nearly as dire for America as our lack of industry is.
That's remarkable.
It's hard. It's like almost speechless just
to
think about.
My question was going to literally be, what's the number one thing that every American citizen and world citizen needs to be paying attention to right now and then be proactive about? And I think you just answered that question, gentlemen.
Absolutely. We're supposed to be the richest country in the world. And if you look at it, it looks to me more and more like a third world country every day.
Right.
Every single day.
Our infrastructure is terrible.
I mean, look how they've demonized the nuclear industry here for nuclear power plants here in America. It's like this scaremongering that we cannot touch those anymore. Don't even re-look at them with new inventions of the 21st century to bring nuclear power, the whole system back here in America. So there's many new technologies. There's so many different new inventions and ideas that we could be using time around, at least.
So before we get out of here, I know our time's running out.
Don't leave.
I know this is too interesting, but what advice can you give our listeners? Like you said, Eddie asked a great question of what can people be proactive with, but what advice of who to listen to? Because again, we don't always get the right, listen to Fox News or which news. You never know who to listen to get the correct,
or which paper, or which book, or which.
Who would you suggest that people can go to get at least somewhat of the truth to them? So can you get some suggestions?
Well, myself is a good place.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Is that 21stcenturywire.com and
or Buzzsaw?
Yay!
I'll tell you, I think I don't want to just promote ourselves, because obviously we're part of a whole stream of alternative media. I would say listen to your own self, man.
Yay.
Use your senses, use your reason. You're a human being on a planet. Haven't you been tricked for long enough?
Right.
I think it is personal. I agree with you. I believe the one thing, even though I come from the world of television and I'm watching the demise of news on television, but actually I'm okay with that, because what the internet has provided now is a self-service, if you will, of news and information where you can seek out what interests you. You decide who you trust and their point of view and what they're presenting. And that, to me, is mind-blowing as a person really who's made her entire career as a journalist. I so appreciate that. And I think that my colleagues think I've gone freaking nuts.
Of course they think that, because they're so different in their perspective. But when you do what you're just talking about, Anna, then you find the communities within your community that you just sort of quietly tiptoe to late at 9 p.m. at night, and you guys all sit and talk about exactly what Sean and Dean are speaking about now. And this is going to sound crazy. My mind is an interesting playground.
We don't doubt that.
Yes. And so do you gentlemen and do you guys here in the studio remember the movie with Shelley Winters called The Poseidon Adventure?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I do anyway. I don't know about
Well,
that.
the premise of it is there's a giant ship. It's called the Poseidon, and it's hit by a rogue wave, and then it's turned upside down. And then you have all of the authorities on the ship. Now, I was a little boy when I watched this, and I learned right then and there about following yourself, trusting your heart, following your own gut instinct. So there were hundreds, thousands of people on the ship, and 99.9% of the people on that ship followed the leaders, followed the authorities that kept telling them the right direction to go. And every flippin' one of them died. And then there was one guy, quote, spiritual leader, if you will. I think it was Gene Hackman.
It was.
Of course.
That had the prostitute and the newlywed, had the brother and the sister, had the odd bunch, Shelley Winters and her husband, and they followed their gut and followed him. And so there was about 6 or 10 of them that lived. And that's kind of what I feel like you guys are. You're like the Shelley Winters of the 21st century.
I love that.
I think Sean's more than me.
So you're helping us get back in touch with that which we're being dumbed down to.
If people are calling you crazy, I'll tell you what, that's the first step.
Right.
That's the first step. That's the first finding truth. Is when people call you crazy, then you know you're on the right track.
That's right.
I think people got to get past the consensus reality of just because, the 10 people in the room out of 15, say the sky's purple, it's really blue. So people got to get past the peer pressure. People got to get past their peer pressure of, this is really all it is. It's just the police are right. The dollar will never fail. Don't look into things called Bitcoin. There's nothing else. So it's about getting past the peer pressure. And, I think long of the 21st century, I'm sorry, Shelley Winters.
Her too.
Her too, yeah.
Excuse me.
I'm cuter.
Well, I guess that makes you Ted Danson, Sean. We're just trying to do our best, guys, and we're not always right, but it can't get any worse. So we're just trying to be as close to the mark as possible, and we're putting some skin in the game, and it's about time everyone else does the same.
No, I think you're absolutely correct, and for the people that are local, because we get international listeners live, but if you're local, coming up in February 6th through the 8th, and I believe you guys are going to be speaking on the 8th at the Conscious Life Expo here in Los Angeles. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a Saturday, yeah.
Saturday, okay. So it'd be, I guess, maybe 7th or whatever. But make sure you go to consciouslifeexpo.com and check out the list. So if you guys wanted to see Sean and Dean live and get to ask your own questions, please get your tickets. But and
it sounds like a Vegas show act.
I know, right?
I know. You guys
Sean
are
and Dean
wonderful.
live.
Sean and Dean.
Trust your
You
heart.
have white tigers.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
You're not going to get drug away, are you?
That's awesome.
But until then, Sean, why don't you tell people where they can follow you and see you? Because I know you have a show that you do. So let's promote
Don't
that.
you hate that word, follow me? I hate that. It's like, no, we're not cult leaders here.
Here's
Right?
a better way to say it. Here's what you do. You say connect with me.
Are
Yeah,
you
connect
following
with
me
me.
on Facebook?
I'm
It's like,
stalking
listen,
you on.
I don't want to be stalked. I don't want people following me around everywhere.
Are you
I go.
on Twitter? Are you on Twitter by any chance?
Yes, I'm on Twitter
Okay.
at scstone5. And on Facebook, Sean Stone. I have a community page or fan page, and then we have which is broadcast on YouTube. But you can also go to the Lip, which is our network, lip.tv/buzzsaw. But really, I mean, you pretty much Google my name and you find out everything, every atrocious thing I've ever done in my life.
That's why I love the internet.
That's right.
Like I'm like a cult leader. I'm a cult Satanist leader, according to some people.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, we ran out of time to talk about that, didn't we? Darn it.
I've joined the terrorist groups. I've joined the terrorists, and I don't even know what the heck I've done. Some of this stuff is so wild.
The Illuminati.
Now, do you have anything else coming up besides Conscious Life Expo? Any movies, any TV shows, anything you've produced?
I don't know. Can we talk about certain things, Sean?
To honest, that policy is just, you speak about it when it's done, and then, you promote it. And until then, I just don't like to speak on things because it's, when you're in development and gestation, you don't want to bring negative forces or energies.
Good. And when it is done, please, please, please come back.
Yeah, we definitely want you to come back. Now, Dean, what about you? Where can we find you?
Well, people want to hear me. I'm on every Sunday morning on 21stcenturywire.com with the great Patrick Henningsen from RT and The Guardian from the UK. And I'm there. I do my segment, The Ryan Report, every Sunday. And if people want to follow me and need a leader, they can find me at twitter.com/TheRealDeanRyan. And I'm on Facebook. And I've said some pretty funny, outrageous things in the past, I'm sure. But yeah, the real Dean Ryan, because the other Dean Ryans, there's a bunch of Dean Ryans out there. There are a bunch of players from England, so I had to put the real one. So anyways, yeah, that's the best thing. And as far as a lot of good things coming in the new year, I'm out here in New Zealand and Sydney filming a documentary on Bitcoin, which is exploding out here down under. And you may see out next year, and there's some really cool things coming next year. It's going to be exciting.
And when you gentlemen come back, will you tell us and talk to us about and educate us a little bit on who the Jinn are and the beings from other star systems? Because I'm fascinated by that.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. You may be one. So
Eddie is one.
Just work on remembering.
Okay. I know Eddie is one. I can tell you that right now.
I just got psychic nipple erection. Thanks, guys.
Oh, my. If only you were wearing a T-shirt so I could see.
Boom, boom, chakalaka, boom.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Please come back, and since I own the network, you have a home here anytime, so you can stop in.
Yes.
If you guys need to drop any news coming out, all right? All right, well, thank you, and have a great holiday, and we'll see you in February.
Great.
Cheers.
All right,
Cheers.
take care.
Bye.
All right, guys. Well, it's our time to say goodbye to all our company. Anna, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Tony. This was fun. So nice meeting you, Eddie.
It was. I'm in heaven right now.
Isn't
Really?
she beautiful?
Yeah.
She's
you
beautiful.
guys are so
Yeah.
nice.
Beautiful inside and out.
Oh, and she brought some class because.
Did I?
Yes.
I just brought Charlie Stewart.
We're talking about you, child, and Charlie.
Yeah, no, you brought
my
a lot
friend
of class.
Charlie.
And Eddie, as always, thank you. I love you so
Thank
much.
you. Love you harder.
No, you don't. All right, so we're out of here. Hey, next week, stick around. We will be announcing who is going to be on the show for next Friday. But December is going to be amazing when it comes to guests. We have some. I know people. We're going to go into the Egyptian mines. Yes, of the.
Are we going to the tombs as
We're
well?
going to go to the tombs, and we're going to go down into the sky and talk about the gods. We have a lot of great authors and experts coming on the show. So anyway, we're out of here, and have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday if you tune in for On Air with Tony Sweet on Universal Broadcasting. Take care, guys.